Hello, good evening, and welcome back. When shitposting has real world consequences. Yes, this is the strike from Trump to Iran. Qasem Soleimani. Probably a different pronunciation each time. Mourners gather in Baghdad for funeral procession, as well as people who celebrate because they didn't appreciate his theocratic crackdown. And this is the battle between the Sunnis and the Shias because Muslims can't even get along with other Muslims. I think every moderate has just clicked off the video now. A huge crowd in Iraq's capital, Baghdad, is taking part in a funeral procession for the Iranian military commander Qasem Soleimani, who was killed in a US airstrike on Thursday. He knew Trump quite well because they had a Twitter spat going back to last year, and obviously they didn't get along very well, and it escalated until Trump killed him. So, yes, this is when shitposting on Twitter and Instagram actually leads to a death, and I'm not just talking about SWAT raids. For anyone who's wondering, that's where you have probably a friend and you call a SWAT raid on their home because you're a piece of shit, and it can result in deaths. So, Soleimani was the architect of Iran's Middle East operations, and Iran vowed to take severe revenge for his death. But what is Iran actually going to do? Well, nothing. Their military pales in comparison to America, and if they tried anything, then they would be obliterated straight away. So in a way, you kind of hope that they will try something. But you might be thinking, oh, but World War III has been trending on Twitter. It's like, yeah, but so has Black Twitter. And World War III trending has been going back for years. Even before Trump took office. It doesn't really mean anything. It just happens every few months because sensationalism sells. I say like fear sells papers, but I think it's more tribalism. To basically say, oh yeah, our side is correct, but the other side is evil. Therefore, keep doing what you're doing, because you deserve a clap. Yeah. And it's all just patronising bullshit to me. The gathering in Baghdad on Saturday marked the beginning of days of mourning for Soleimani. His body is to be returned to Iran for funeral and burial in his own town. The crowds in Baghdad were also there to mourn the death of Abu Mahid al-Muhandis. I'm hoping that one day one of these guys will just be called Jeff. We can just say, mourn the death of Jeff. And that will be a sad day when Jeff dies. An Iraqi who commanded the Iranian-backed Kataib Hezbollah group and effectively led the Popular Mobilization Units, an umbrella of militias in Iraq dominated by groups aligned with Iran. Iran V? Typo? It's near the spacebar, let's go with the typo. Mourners started gathering in Baghdad from the early hours ahead of the start of the procession, waving Iraqi militia flags and chanting "Death to America." The procession snaked through streets, some carrying portraits of Soleimani and some of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Dave. There you go. Yeah, they're trying to say "Death to America," but of course this is, again, just the battles between the different boys. It's a sectarian civil war, essentially. It's the Sunnis versus the Shias. Neither of them are getting on with one another. It's like, what I find funny that apparently the progressives in the West say, oh, you shouldn't be worried about the Islamic terror attacks because most of the suicide bombers happen in Islamic countries. It's like, yeah, they can't even get on with themselves. So even if we were majority Islamic, they'd still kill us. So what you're saying is we should just get rid of Islam from the world. They're just a stain on the world, and we should remove them for a more understanding religion. I guess we agree. Well done. It's almost as if the left doesn't think through their positions, as if there's anything new there at all. Reports said the bodies of the Iranians would then be flown on Saturday evening to Iran, which has declared 3 days of mourning for the murdered general. 3 more days for America to take charge. Not that he's going for a ground war. I mean, come on, that'd be stupid. I mean, surely you've seen the fallout from, I mean, it started with Vietnam, and then more recently with Bush, that people aren't going to be supporting a ground war. We have the military superiority, we have air supremacy, and then the other sort of supremacy you wish to mention. And at that point, we don't need to get on the ground. We can take out the targets as we want. And I'm not talking about how Obama just said, hey, they're military-aged men, you know, they're young men. They're basically part of their army, so we definitely didn't kill any civilians there, even though he's known as Obama-in-Chief. Yeah. Well, as well as Deporter-in-Chief. Obama and Deporter-in-Chief, considering how many illegal immigrants he deported. But hey, the Overton window was in his favour, and the mainstream media was, of course, going to sing his praises because, oh, he's a black president. We can't say anything bad about him, unless, of course, he was in South Africa instead, in which case he'd be a white president. Funny how this works, isn't it? It's almost as if skin colour doesn't mean anything, as as the actual progressives have been saying for centuries. In which case, we're not really that progressive, I guess. We're just the enlightened ones. And next step, Nirvana. Some Iraqis conversely celebrated in Baghdad streets at the news of Soleimani's death. He was accused of orchestrating violent crackdowns on peaceful pro-democracy protests there in recent months. As is understandable. I mean, just pick any leader out of the third world and chances are they've killed innocent people. That's what they tend to do for fun. So, here is the analysis by a sex-starved international correspondent. Iran's retaliation is certain. When, where, how is not. In other words, it is uncertain. In fact, chances are it's not going to happen because they can't do anything. If they do try and retaliate, Trump will only crack down harder. So, essentially, they're not going to bother, which is reassuring. For now, the priority is to cement Qasem Soleimani's status, brilliant, as a national hero to ensure he remains powerful in death as in life. He was so useful in life, he's just as good in death. Brilliant. This sounds like North Korea's supreme leaders. Elaborate plans for his funeral have been expanded. A mix of carefully scripted ceremony with outpourings of grief filling the streets. It begins in Baghdad, where he died, and where so much of his legacy lives. Yes, even more death and torture will live on after his death. That's just the way they do things there. All cultures are beautiful, don't you know? And to appropriate is to appreciate. So if you brutally stabbed and killed someone, torture them to death, hey, you're just channeling your inner Muhammad, peace be upon him. They got fresh airstrikes in Iraq. It says on Friday there had been another strike in the country, 24 hours after the killing of Soleimani. An Iraqi army source told the Reuters news agency that 6 people were killed in the new strike, which hit a convoy of Iraqi militia in the early hours of Saturday morning local time. So it was actually targeting military instead of just military-aged men. Seems like Trump is doing better than Obama. Tick yet another box. The United States said it had deployed an additional 3,000 troops to the Middle East to help respond to any backlash from the strike. Will they'll be successful? How did Iran react? The supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei... Why does his surname sound like come on in? Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said his departure to God does not end his path or his mission, but a forceful revenge awaits the criminals who have his blood on and the blood of the other martyrs last night on their hands. In other words, you're not going to do anything. Brilliant. How does Iraq fit into this? Iran supports a variety of Shia militia groups in the neighbouring Iraq. Soleimani had just arrived at Baghdad airport and was travelling in a convoy alongside officials from such militia when their cars were hit by several US missiles. I believe that Shia are a majority in Iran, but a minority in Iraq, and the Sunni are a minority in Iran, but a majority in Iraq. That's why that support is important. Al-Mohandes, the Iraqi militia leader who was also killed in the strike, commanded the Kataib Hezbollah group, also backed by Iran. So they took out the terrorists and they're saying this is an act of war. Well, it's a retaliation because if you're going after terrorists, they've already launched war at you. ISIS launched war at the West years ago, and nobody in the West really cares because they're just incapable, but inbreeding tends to do that to you. So, just wrapping up here, they say he came to prominence in Iran, being the subject of documentaries, news reports, and even pop songs from the war against the rebels in Syria. And under his 21-year leadership of the Quds force, Iran bolstered Hezbollah and other pro-Iranian militant groups in Lebanon, expanded its military presence in Iraq and Syria, and orchestrated Syria's offensive against rebel groups in that country's long civil war. So they've been at war for millennia, and as soon as they start to branch out and attack a civilized country, America, the police of the world, whether they should be or not, decided, well, we're not going to let you get away with that. Let's just take one of your guys out. Super simple, job done, no American losses. Perfect. They didn't even lose a dog this time, so I think it's progress. Well done, Trump. So in terms of their response, there isn't going to be one. In terms to people in the West saying, oh, Trump is literally Hitler, he's awful. It's like, well, you've been saying this for years. It's the boy who cried wolf. we don't care anymore. Trump is going to win a re-election with a bigger victory than last time, and he's going to get on well with Johnson, and we're going to have a great trade deal once we leave the EU. So, as political repeating history of the Roaring Twenties, it seems like we're on track for a great time. And hey, we didn't even have to have another world war, but seeing as we've left Europe, I guess we have defeated Germany yet again.